Did I ruin my marriage by lying to make my wife look bad in front of her friends? I never imagined it would spiral this far out of control. What began as a small, innocuous lie, something I thought would fade quickly into the background of life's noise, has now become a festering wound. Each day, I can feel it gnawing at me, tightening its grip. And the worst part is, I can't stop. I'm too deep into it now, and the only direction left to go is further down. The suffocating weight of my guilt is everywhere, pressing into me, stealing my breath. But I suppose I should start from the beginning. My wife, Leah, was perfect. At least to everyone else. That's how she appeared. She has this effortless charm, this radiant smile that people can't seem to resist. Whenever we were around others, they gravitated towards her, as if she were the sun and they were just caught in her orbit. It wasn't that I didn't love her, I did. Deeply. But sometimes, it felt like I was nothing more than a shadow in her brilliance. In the early years of our marriage, that didn't bother me. I was proud of her. Proud to be the man standing beside such an incredible woman. But after a while, the constant comparisons began to eat away at me. Friends, family, even strangers, it was always Leah this, Leah that. Leah had the better job. Leah had the better sense of humor. Leah was the one people wanted to be around. I became a footnote in my own life story, the side character in a plot that revolved around her. I know how petty that sounds. Believe me, I'm not proud of it. But over time, the resentment began to build. Quietly at first, like an unnoticed crack in a foundation. I didn't even realize how much it bothered me until the day it all came crashing down. It started with her friends. A group of women I had grown to loathe, not because they were bad people, but because of the way they idolized Leah. Every time they got together, it was like they were forming a little cult around her, gushing over her every word, her every gesture. They adored her, and that adoration only served to make me feel smaller. I was invisible when they were around, and I began to wonder if maybe I was invisible to her too. It was during one of their gatherings that the first lies slipped out. They had all come over to our house for one of those wine and cheese nights Leah loved so much. I had been in the kitchen, pretending to be busy, when I overheard one of her friends, Sarah, talking about how lucky Leah was to have such a perfect marriage. Something inside me snapped. She's not as perfect as you think, I muttered, almost to myself. But Sarah heard. She glanced over at me, eyebrows raised, clearly intrigued. What do you mean? And that was it. The light tumbled out before I could stop it, like a rock falling from a cliff, gaining speed as it went. I told Sarah that Leah had been neglecting me, that she didn't care about me the way she used to, that she was selfish and cold when no one else was around. It wasn't true, not entirely, at least, but once the words were out, I couldn't take them back. Sarah's face had darkened with concern, and she pulled me aside, urging me to share more. I didn't want to. I really didn't. But the more I talked, the more I realized how much I enjoyed the attention. For the first time in years, someone was looking at me, not Leah, and they were actually listening. So, I kept going. I exaggerated things, twisting little moments of frustration into a story of a marriage that was falling apart. I painted Leah as someone cold and distant, uncaring and detached. That night, as Leah laughed and chatted with her friends in the other room, I quietly rewrote our history in the kitchen. Over the following weeks, Sarah must have talked to the others, because suddenly they started treating Leah differently. There were concerned looks, quiet conversations in the corners of rooms when she wasn't paying attention. And while Leah remained oblivious, basking in their friendship, I watched with a sick satisfaction as their admiration for her began to crumble. They still adored her. Of course, after all, Leah was Leah, but cracks were forming in their perfect image of her. They no longer looked at her with that same unyielding reverence. I should have felt guilty. I should have confessed everything to Leah, apologized, and told her the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I kept the lie going, feeding it little by little. Every time we were with her friends, I would drop some subtle comment, a carefully placed word that suggested there was more to our marriage than they realized. And it worked. It worked too well. Leah began to notice that her friends were acting strange. She'd ask me, confused, why they seemed distant, why they weren't as warm with her as they used to be. And I would just shrug, pretending I didn't know. But inside, I was reveling in it. For the first time in our relationship, I felt like I had control, like I was the one pulling the strings. But control is a dangerous thing. Once you have it, you never want to let go. You start to think you're invincible, that you can do anything without consequence. One night, Leah came home from a dinner with her friends, her face pale and her eyes wide. She sat down at the kitchen table, staring at me in disbelief. "Sarah told me you said." She didn't finish the sentence. But she didn't need to. I knew what she was going to say. And my heart sank. I had been caught. I could see the betrayal in her eyes. The confusion. She wanted an explanation. But how could I give her one? How could I tell her that I had lied to her friends? That I had twisted the truth just to make myself feel better? I tried to deny it at first. Of course. I told her that Sarah must have misunderstood, that I would never say such things. But Leah wasn't stupid. She knew me better than anyone, and she could see through my lies as easily as if I were speaking them aloud. The silence between us that night was suffocating. Leah didn't yell, didn't accuse me of anything. She just sat there, staring at me with a mixture of hurt and disbelief, as if she couldn't quite process what I had done. I thought that would be the worst of it, that once Leah found out, the guilt would finally catch up with me, and I would feel the full weight of what I had done. But it wasn't. The worst part came later, when Leah's friends began to distance themselves from her even more. They didn't believe her when she tried to explain that things between us weren't as bad as I had made them seem. They looked at her with pity, as if she were the one who was blind to the truth. And slowly, one by one, they began to drift away, pulling back from the friendship they once held so dear. I watched it happen, powerless to stop it. And I realized too late what I had done. In my desperation to make Leah seem less perfect, I had destroyed something precious to her. And now, I couldn't take it back. Leah withdrew into herself after that. She stopped laughing as much, stopped smiling as easily. The light that had once made her the center of attention, that had drawn people to her like moths to a flame, began to fade. And as her world grew smaller, so did mine. I thought the lies would make me feel better, that by bringing Leah down, I would finally feel like I was her equal. But all they did was leave me feeling emptier than before. I had gained nothing from them, except the hollow satisfaction of watching someone else suffer because of my insecurities. Now, as I sit here, in the silence of our home, I wonder if I'll ever be able to fix what I've broken. Leah still sits across from me at the dinner table every night. But there's a distance between us now that wasn't there before. A chasm that I created, and that I don't know how to bridge. I lied to make my wife look bad to her friends. But in the end, I'm the one who ended up looking worse. And I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to forgive myself for that. The weight of my actions sits heavy on my chest, a constant reminder of the damage I've caused. I wish I could go back, erase the lies, undo the harm. But life doesn't work that way. All I can do now is live with the consequences of my choices and hope that, somehow, Leah will find it in her heart to forgive me. Though, if I were her, I'm not sure I would.